What is up, guys? Welcome to my review for Titans Season 2, Episode 7, titled Bruce Wayne. This episode takes place right after the end of the last one, where there was a cliffhanger where Connor was shot by a kryptonite bullet, and then Krypto was taken away by Mercy Graves and her whole entire team. A cliffhanger that I thought was by far the worst part of the episode, because it was a cliffhanger that wasn't necessary, especially when you see the resolution, where it really didn't mean anything, except for maybe having so that Connor doesn't really have much of a role in this episode. There really wasn't much else to it, and I do think that is one problem I have with the cliffhanger in that episode and the resolution to it in this episode. However, I thought this episode was still really, really good, and I think Titans is absolutely killing it in its second season. So with that in mind, let's get straight into the review. The episode begins with Jason seeing himself falling, which is a recurring theme throughout the entirety of the episode until right at the end. It seems like Jason has become incredibly depressed from what happened in the last episode, but also the events of the entirety of the show, as in this episode his depression actually leads him to wanting to commit suicide, which is a subject that I don't think I've ever seen in a superhero TV show as far as I can remember, and it's a subject that I think they handled fairly well, actually very well, in this episode. I'll get to that at the end of this review because it is at the end of the episode, but I think that for one, I think Curran Walters was amazing in this episode. His acting is great. The character of Jason Todd is so three-dimensional, it's insane. And after this episode and also the entirety of the show, while Connor is probably still my favorite character, I think that Jason Todd is probably my second favorite, and that was just the case for the entirety of the show. It's really between Jason and Dick until Connor came around. At this point, I think it is Jason a little bit over Dick because of this episode, because of how three-dimensional he is as a character and how great the actor Curran Walters is in the role. And just like Superboy, I would love a spin-off show where Jason Todd is the Red Hood. So then, Dick begins to hallucinate Bruce Wayne, which is the title of the episode. This episode doesn't actually contain Bruce Wayne at all. I mean, the character doesn't appear because he's just a ghost or some sort of hallucination for Dick Grayson for the entirety of the episode. Now, I still do not like the casting of Ian Glenn as Bruce Wayne. I think that he's a great actor. He was great in Game of Thrones, and the way he looks, his accent, and everything about him, he would have been an incredible casting for Alfred Pennyworth, which is why he's such a terrible casting for Bruce Wayne. I still think so. He looks way too old and way too different from Bruce Wayne. I think even the fact that his accent is British, which you can tell at times he is British, it doesn't make sense. His casting still makes no sense to me. However, while the casting doesn't make any sense, I did actually like Bruce's role in this episode. Dick was hallucinating Bruce. Bruce basically acted as his conscience, which I think worked. It worked for him trying to tell Dick to tell his secret, with the mystery of what that secret is, which is pretty obvious based off the ending of episode 5, where he went after Jericho. I didn't 100% know that he actually killed Jericho, but it's just that him using Jericho against Slade, that is definitely, it was obvious. However, it still worked for this episode, and Bruce's role in this episode was pretty good. He also did the Batman 1960s dance, which was a pretty ridiculous and stupid moment, but I respect the fact that they actually had that callback back to that show, and it was definitely a very recognizable moment. But anyway, Bruce's role in the episode, it was actually pretty good. Maybe not enough to justify the episode being called Bruce Wayne, and also, again, not enough to make me like the casting of Bruce Wayne, but definitely not terrible either. So we see Connor in a coma, but basically confirming that he will not die, which is great because I really never want to see him die, at least at this point, and I wanted to get his own TV show. Again, he's my favorite character on the show at this point, but I'm glad that he didn't die. However, like I said, I didn't love the cliffhanger the last episode, and I think it was completely unnecessary considering the actual resolution in this one with Connor, but also with Krypto, and also kind of Eve. Because in the last episode, as Connor was shot and Krypto was captured, it was a very unnecessary cliffhanger, but if it exists, then they might as well resolve it in a good way, which I don't think they did. They resolved it way too quickly because, I mean, they did the cliffhanger and then they basically resolved it at the end of this episode, which meant the cliffhanger wasn't necessary. I mean, with Connor being shot, he was fine by the end of this episode. It didn't really mean anything other than making it so that Connor doesn't really have much screen time or role in this episode, but specifically with Krypto, he was captured and it made it feel like it was going to be a big thing, Crypto being captured. Maybe there's going to be some sort of rescue mission, or maybe he's going to turn into a villain, or maybe even be killed. The latter two wasn't exactly something I wanted to see, but I do think the rescue mission could have been cool. However, in this episode, Crypto is freed immediately by Eve Watson, who is fired, and I do think that all of that was too quick because it makes the cliffhanger at the end of the last episode unnecessary, which it kind of already was. So again, not really a problem with this episode all that much, but it is something I wanted to mention. It doesn't really take away from the episode much. I still did like this storyline, as the ending to it with Starfire using her powers to basically infuse sun radiation or sun levels of radiation into Connor, which woke him out of his coma, with Rachel containing the blast, containing the radiation with her powers. Visually, it was great. It was a pretty awesome moment, and the reunion between Eve and Connor, with Connor calling her mom, it was a little bit emotional, and it was all fine. Again, a storyline that I thought was good, but it was maybe, it resolved the kind of unnecessary cliffhanger, which was already unnecessary, fairly quickly. So anyway, Dick begins to try to find Slade so that he could basically end it. He goes to this bar and he interrogates this guy, or he threatens this guy with a gun to ask him to, like, where is Slade, but then he also ends up asking where Billy Wintergreen is. Throughout this scene, we do get a bunch of Bruce moments, which are pretty cool, and overall, I do like Dick's storyline, his interactions with Bruce, how it kind of makes him look how, like, he's crazy, but also that all leading up to the ending, which I will get to when we get there, but I do think this was a good start to that storyline. Then back at Titan's Tower, Rose comes to Jason's room as Jason is again looking at himself falling, or staring out into the blank window and then imagining himself falling. That Rose comes to his room and actually begins to flirt with him, a relationship that I never necessarily thought needed, or I never thought that it would exist. I never really came to mind. However, it was really great in this episode. I thought these two had some great chemistry, and these scenes were actually not that bad. In fact, they were pretty good, and they also contributed to Jason's the climax of his storyline in this episode, which I think that everything that added on to Jason, where he feels guilty for what happened to him, and also the fact that he fell off a building and also almost died, but then with Rose getting angry with him, with the rest of the Titans getting angry with him, it all led up to a great climax. And these scenes with later Rose kissing Jason, or them kissing each other, and then after that Rose finds Jericho's records and angrily leaves, that was really great. It worked really well. And also, if Jason and Rose do become a couple later on, I wouldn't mind that at all. I think that it was great, even maybe after he comes back from the dead, where it's Red Hood and Ravager. I do think that could definitely work. So after Dick finds out where Billy Wintergreen is, after the scene in the nightclub with the Batman 1960s dance with Bruce Wayne, he goes to Billy Wintergreen, asks him where Slade is, threatens to kill him if he doesn't tell him, but then he does get a call from Slade telling him to go to this church. In this scene with the church, it definitely is basically the climax of Dick's storyline, as he has this conversation with Bruce Wayne about telling the truth, which, like I said earlier in the video, I really did like that. That was Bruce's main role in this episode, which I thought worked really well. And Dick's storyline of having this secret, feeling like he has to defeat Slade on his own because everything is his fault. And then I do think that in the scene, Brenton Thwaites is really, really good, where he basically snaps at Bruce for Bruce telling him that he needs to tell his secret. But then after that pretty awesome scene, he finds these pictures of the Titans, hinting at that not only is Deathstroke in the Titans Tower, but that he was responsible for all the taunts that Hank, Dawn, Donna, and now Rachel got over the course of the episode. Like I said, over the course of the episode, Hank, Donna, Dawn, and then at the end, Rachel, and maybe also Rose, that might have been a part of it as well, all find items either from 5 years ago or from their past, taunting them about what's happening. The only two characters who don't seem to be getting anything taunting them are Jason and Beast Boy. I do genuinely believe that it is not Jason who's planting all these things. I also don't think it's Slade Wilson. I don't think Slade Wilson is actually in Titan's Tower. I think, considering Beast Boy is the only other character other than Jason who didn't get anything taunting him, and he's had no role in this season whatsoever. He's had nothing to do. Maybe, what if Beast Boy has been maybe either a sleeper agent for Deathstroke, or is just straight up working for him? Maybe there's going to be this huge twist where Beast Boy has been working for Slade. It would be a huge departure from the comics, and Beast Boy would end up being a villain, but it would be such a great twist that would justify his lack of screen time in the season, which has been very evident. Garfield Logan has had basically nothing to do this season, aside from going with Jason to fight Dr. Light, and then Jason got kidnapped. He's literally done nothing. The biggest thing he's done is turn to a snake in the opening season. nobody's even mentioned that. He never turned into a snake again, and he just has nothing to do. So what if, considering he got no taunts, considering he was not around for the most part, considering he's had no screen time, to justify that, they make it so that he's been working for Slade either as a sleeper agent or as a regular person who ended up betrays them. But that would, I think, be the best outcome here. Probably the sleeper agent, so he can continue being a character and a main hero, or one of the main heroes. But I do think the lack of screen time for Beast Boy is definitely very, very noticeable, and it sucks because he could definitely be a great character. So anyway, as all the Titans find all these things taunting them, Rachel snaps at Jason, basically assuming it was Jason because Jason has that kind of thing where he might do something like that. I think that might be it. It might have something to do with Rachel's telepathy or something, which is a power I'm pretty sure she has. She could probably tell who did this, but if she can't, then she's basically just assuming it's Jason because Jason is the most likely person to do this, which I think that was definitely either bad writing or more likely a character flaw for Rachel, basically calling Jason out for something that she doesn't even know that he did. The rest of the Titans join in as well, basically either backing Rachel or assuming the same thing, which I think that was a little bit weird. They didn't really explain why the rest of the Titans 100% knew that it was Jason, because based off Jason's reaction, either he is, like I said for Beast Boy, being a sleeper agent for Deathstroke, or he's very genuine here and he has no idea what's going on, which I do think that is the case. But this scene with the Titans all ganging up on Jason, except for the fact that I don't know why they did this 100%, they don't really know it was Jason. This was a very intense scene, and like I said, for basically everything else in this episode, the build up to Jason losing it and going to the roof, trying to jump off and kill himself, the build-up was great, and like I said, Curran Walter's acting in this moment, or basically every single moment in this season, or in this episode, a lot in this season, but mainly in this episode, it worked very well, making Jason such a three-dimensional character, and really selling how broken he is at this point. But then he leaves after the Titans snap at him, he leaves to the roof, and that's when Dick shows up. Dick tells the Titans that Deathstroke is in the building, which I don't think is 100% true. He might not know that, because it could be either Rose or Gar, most likely Gar, as Gar then just shows up saying he overslept, which is a flimsy excuse for saying why he wasn't in that scene and why he didn't get any taunts from Deathstroke, and I do think that it means that it's probably hinting that Gar was the one who actually placed all of those things. But anyway, Dick goes to the roof and confronts Jason. This scene is really, really good, with Jason basically saying that he's going to kill himself and he's about to jump, explaining why he does this. Like I keep on saying, Curran Walters is great and in the role and in these scenes, and this scene is fairly emotional with how Jason is completely broken. This is something that, like I said before, I don't think a superhero show has ever tackled, and this episode tackled it fairly well, with Jason just straight up being suicidal in this episode. But then Dick tries to calm him down and to stop him by telling him his secret, saying that he was the poison in the team that infected the team and it wasn't Jason. That's when Bruce disappears, as he tells Jason that he killed Jericho. I don't 100% know that he did kill Jericho. I feel like he just feels responsible because he put Jericho in the crosshairs of Deathstroke and he used Jericho against Deathstroke, and that resulted in his death. Or maybe he's talking about a different son. Maybe he's talking about Grant Wilson. I doubt that, but anyway, I do think that this was a great scene and a great ending to this episode, making this another great episode for this season. So in conclusion, this episode has, basically every storyline is good or even great, but there are parts of it I don't like. Like, the Dick Grayson storyline is great, but I still don't like Ian Glenn as Bruce Wayne, and I don't think I ever will. The Jason Todd storyline is really good, however, the scene where all the Titans gang up on him, and they, basically blame him for everything that's going on in the episode, and all the taunts from, it was probably Deathstroke, but I do think that they just blamed him out of nowhere, and that part of it didn't make much sense. However, both those storylines, aside from those two things, are really, really good. The resolution to Superboy's cliffhanger the last episode wasn't great, but there were definitely a lot of great moments, like visually, and also even one bit that was a little bit emotional. So a fairly good episode. Definitely not, I don't think, the best episode of this season or anywhere near, but definitely what I would call a good episode, and I'll give it an 8.7 out of 10. But let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments down below, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.